and science in perfect harmony. Possible? Dr. Shel Krakofsky thinks so. He practices medicine in London and writes poetry at his home in nearby Kamoka, Ontario. For Krakofsky, the relationship is clear. Poetry is a revenge against science. His poems can be found in several books. His latest is Listening to Somersaults. We paid a house call to the country doctor whose passion is poetry.
Hi, Julie. How you doing, dear?
Well, not too bad. Can't grumble.
Well, then don't.
I'd like to feel a lot better.
Yeah, well, at your age, you're doing well. Actually, you're doing well for my age. In how many months will you be 100?
I'll be 100 years old if the good Lord spares me. The 17th of January, this coming January.
Okay.
The family are planning a housewarming, but I don't want it.
Perfect. For sure, I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Okay, that'll be fine.
You be well.
Bye.
You're a guy who has four loves, if I understand you. Medicine, poetry, baseball, and your Judaism.
Yes.
How did you get to the point in life where you sort of understood that's what it was about for you?
I think about 10 years ago when I started writing, and it all came together, and I was able to find a fusion with all these things. So when I'm in synagogue, I can think about baseball. When I'm in baseball, when I'm at a baseball stadium, I can think about God. When I'm writing, I actually do not think about medicine. That's the one thing I separate. That's the one compartment of my life that stays separate. Medicine is medicine.
Poetry is useless, you write. It can't feed a child or fix a car. That's why it's so important. Again, explain.
Yeah, that one I can explain. It makes a little more sense to me. A lot of people, most people I think, consider science and medicine very important for the prolongation and the quality of life. On the other hand, while these things make life possible, it's the arts that make life worthwhile. And I find that if I were just doing practical things, you know, mowing the lawn, feeding a child, for example, that's fine, but there's no juice to it. There's no stuff, and that's why I like writing. It is useless. It doesn't do any of these things, but it adds the condiments to our life, if you will. A runner at first. Not created to hit home runs, the Jew is always a runner at first. He waits for signs and signals, inching off the bag, playing his own game with the pitcher. Wanting to be ignored, hoping to be seen, he frets over his leadoff, afraid of being picked off, erased with a flick of the wrist. Having learned to hold little faith in the batter, he takes his own chances to advance, wondering eternally how to arrive safely at the place called home.
Shel, you are the only person I know who could compare a runner at first base to the plight of the Jewish community. You better explain this to me.
Well, it's a poem I probably couldn't have written 50 years ago, because 50 years ago, of course, before the creation of the State of Israel and during and after the Holocaust, to carry the metaphor even further, a Jew couldn't even get to first base. But now that he can get to first base, he still has to watch himself. He wants to be seen, though he wants to be ignored as well. He's afraid of being marginalized again. He's afraid that racism can crop up its ugly head. And he doesn't consider himself yet a home run hitter. And so he inches off the bag. He doesn't know whether to take a chance or not. He doesn't know if to go for the top. In most cases, he can.
Like to steal second, but he's afraid he's going to have to run back into first.
That's right.
Lest he be tagged.
And he couldn't hit a home run to start with. So, but that's the plight of most of us anyway.
People are going to be wondering why we're talking baseball in a cemetery, and here's the reason.
Well, Mooney Gibson is buried next door to my home. When we first moved in here, I came to see why my neighbors were so quiet and really to find out the history of the place. And I came across Mooney's grave. I heard of him, but I didn't know much about him.
He was one of the greatest baseball players ever to come out of Canada.
He, in fact, was voted Canada's best baseball player of the first half century and was the first Canadian baseball player to be elected into our Sports Hall of Fame. And the player who will probably be the player of the next half century is from around here, too, Ferguson, Jenkins, and Chatham.
The difference being, this guy won a World Series.
That's right. In 1909, he played for the Pittsburgh Pirates. They won in 7 games, and he was credited with being one of the main reasons they won the World Series because Ty Cobb couldn't run against him. He was an Iron Man of a catcher, and he caught for Pittsburgh and later in his career with the New York Giants for 14 years, then managed in the big leagues in the 20s and the 30s, mostly with Pittsburgh, and then he retired, was fired in 1932.
And why is he here?
Well, he came back to London, and then towards the end of his life, he retired to be a gentleman farmer, something like myself, about 2 county roads from here. And he came here and was buried in Kamoka. Interestingly enough, just as Toronto has an Ojibwe name for meeting place, Kamoka is also Ojibwe, and it means resting place of forgotten heroes. This poem's significant for me because it's about making decisions, and I suggest there are certain ways of making decisions, and I use baseball again as the metaphor for making decisions. Selecting a baseball mitt. Massage the pocket as gently as the nape of a cradled infant's neck. Pound the pocket until your palm stings with joyous pain, soothed by the balm of lush, confident sound, a ball perfectly captured. Walk with it, run with it in every direction, at all speeds feel the clutch of authority. Toss it to the heavens in triumph. Turf it to the grass in disgust. Prepare yourself for all emotions. Sniff the polished leather like a hunting dog. Paw at the webbing with love and lust. Control the tropism. Take your time. Buying a glove is the same as getting married. You only want to do it once.
Do you need to write?
In fact, I do. Some days it's like breathing. I have this urge to write. And I guess it's part of me that's a voyeur and part of me that's an exhibitionist. And I get to share my discoveries without the need of a woodpile of statistics or any footnotes. And probably subliminally, it's my revenge against science, which I ostensibly practice the rest of the time.
What does it do for you?
It makes me look inward more than outward. I think we live in an age where everybody wants entertainment. Well, entertainment is an escape. And I look more towards the arts, which are directed towards the person, towards the society they're living in. So creativity is much more challenging as far as I'm concerned than entertainment. I'm not entertained by entertainment. I don't need it.
What have you discovered about yourself through the course of writing poetry?
That I think. Therefore I am. Nothing much more than that.
Oh, come on. There's got to be more than that to it.
Can we cut here? I have no idea what to say. Stanley Cup Seder. Our Seder is longer, though the story's the same. We'll get it all in now. There is no big game. Once we skated through it, the answers could wait. The Seder was rushed. The game's on at 8. Booby and Zeta told us to eat slower, read more. But we'd leave our Haggadahs to find out the score and watch on TV our regular Seder guests. How Halmahalich, the Richards at their best. We knew who escaped the Egyptian plagues and sins, but with the Leafs and the Canadians, who'd first get 4 wins? So the door was kept closed. Elijah barred from his cup. Zeta could only resume after Lord Stanley's Cup. 4 cups of wine. This Seder's full length. Expansion, a longer schedule, half-cut NHL strength, and our passion for hockey. Baseball's now the game. The Blue Jays and Expos, their Seder's not the same. Puck finals after Pesach are certainly no treat. Now baseball overlaps hockey, like mixing milk with meat. I use Judaism as a compass to direct my life, and it's also the prism through which I filter what I experience. I was brought up on Christian poetry, you know, Wordsworth, Blake, T.S. Eliot, Milton. I mean, this is what I went to high school with and learned, and related to all of it, even though it was specifically Christian. And to me, English at that time was the language of Christians, not Jews. I grew up in a Yiddish-speaking home. But I could relate to it because they were specific. And for me to write universal language, universal poetry, would be a failure. You'd know it's fraudulent right away.
Famous Canadian author, at a party, surgeon comes up to her, says, you know, when I retire, I think I'd like to do some writing. To which famous Canadian author responds, oh yes, and when I retire, I think I'd like to do some surgery. Which is to suggest that everybody, I guess, thinks that it's doable, easy?
Yeah.
Writing's easy?
No, it's hard.
Yeah.
Harder. It's harder than medicine. I can take any intelligent person and I can turn them into a doctor. You know, there's a body of knowledge, read from A to Z, and if you've got a fairly warm personality and an ability to read and stay up late, I can turn you into a doctor. It's medicine is not rocket science, not to be funny. Rocket science isn't rocket science. Writing, I think you're born with it. I honestly do. I can teach people how to read. I can't teach them how to write. One seed at a time. Preparing this pulsing placental ground for seeding, I bend in reverence, in reverie, on hands and knees, to offer dried kernels of corn in communion, touching, redeeming this earth. The corn is sweet, long before harvest, planted one word at a time, in ordered lines, without hurry or ease. The only way to sow and soar. Bless and be blessed.